Well, the work week is about to get started. Lainey, what can we be expecting for the weather this week?
Yeah, so it's going to be fairly pleasant at the end of the week, but for now we have to deal with some rain chances to begin the work week. Tomorrow, isolated rain chances for the afternoon, and then going into Tuesday, that's when rain chances start to increase, as well as our threat to see some embedded thunderstorms. No severe weather expected out of any of these days, but some of these storms could pack a punch with some heavier rainfall, as well as some gusty winds and frequent lightning. Rain chances finally go down as we head into Friday and into next weekend. Good news is temperatures right around average for this year. I'm very glad that I don't have to say heat advisory probably ever again for the rest of the year. But yeah, it's going to be fairly pleasant.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Thank you, Lainey. Thank you, Trevor. And don't forget, WAAY 31 gives you 24/7 coverage you can count on. Local news, breaking news, and severe weather. Watch WAAY 31 on all of our streaming platforms, and you can download the only weather app with 3 live Doppler radars. Be sure to not go anywhere. WAAY 31 Lawcall is next, and y'all have a wonderful start of your work week.
This is WAAY 31 Lawcall.
Good evening and welcome to WAAY 31 Lawcall. I'm Sharon Doviet. Tonight it's Ask Us Anything night. So call in your questions on everything from workers' comp, car wrecks, contracts, custody issues. The 31 Lawcall number, 256-536-0077. You can call in or you can text us to that same number. So you call in, be live on the air and ask your question, or send in your text and we will get them right here. We've got some of your texts coming in. You can also email a legal question on any legal topic any day of the week. You send it to lawcall@waaytv.com. And when we get to a show that's on point, we pull some out. We will have some of your email questions for you live tonight. We've got with us live tonight Will League and William Messervy from Timberlake League and Brooks. Good to have you here.
All right, Sharon, how are you?
Doing very well. Before we show you some video, we like to show you some video. You make the law call. We decide what you think should happen with this situation. Give us an idea what personal injury cases are. Oh, we've got it up. Okay, so we've got this video. Start to watch. Here come the trees right now.
This gets scarier than it looks.
It starts just with a tree way out in front and you think, oh, they dodged a bullet, but it keeps on going. This looks more like, wait, a landslide kind of situation, mudslide?
You know, that's just amazing, and thankfully, hopefully they got out. We really don't know.
We got the video. No, I do think that they were okay. Thank goodness.
You know, so obviously, hey, this is an act of God, right? So is there, property damage, injuries? You look at comprehensive to pay for your vehicle. Let's say that that road was closed, you drove around the barrier. Like in this area we have flooding, right? So if this bridge is closed, this road is closed, and you drive around that and you get in some problems, you're not covered, you're on your own, and then you're putting first responders at risk to come and save you, which you could potentially be liable for. So we worked on a case together years ago where someone drove around into rushing waters and they perished. What's some of the issues surrounding that case?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, if you drive onto a closed road where emergency responders have come and blocked it off, it's going to null your insurance essentially. I mean,
right.
It's not going to be covered under your insurance, but that's for a closed road. Right? And what we're not certain of in this video is if it was closed or if it was open. Right. And if it was open, then it may be possibly covered under your full coverage. Okay. If you had liability only, you're going to be sort of up the creek without a paddle. And then it always begs the question of, and we've had this issue before, where those who are responsible for maintaining that road and the area around it, if they had notice that there was erosion and these other issues going on and failed to mitigate those, factors, they can be potentially liable.
And where that comes into play is we've had several cases of construction sites. Let's say the land's been prepped, but improperly. You've got inspectors who come out every step of the way. Let's say they skipped a step. They didn't put crusher on. They didn't, put tiebacks, whatever they're supposed to do to move that much dirt. Now, I get it. This is a forest area. Right. But we and I were working on a construction case last year. And we positively resolved it, but the issue was, did the contractor perform the grading properly to not cause damage to other property owners? And so you'll go back and look at what the plans were, what were the specifications, what were the did he pull a permit and what did that permit allow, and what does the standard of care require? and it was a substantial amount of property damage to all the neighbors,
Oh.
and it was just from cutting corners. Now, most of the contractors will do a great job. You know, the inspector comes out and checks that out. But again, if they cut corners and hide it from the inspector, that does not mean they're not liable. And so if there are corners cut and there's damages or people are injured, you are responsible as a contractor, and you're required to work on that job, have insurance to cover you for situations just like this.
That's right.
We've got callers waiting tonight. Lee is on the line with a question from Huntsville. Hi, Lee. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
Hello, Miss Sharon. Found myself in a dilemma after buying a car in June of 2023. I went down to Alabama, registered the car here in Huntsville, and for the third year when I went to register it, they told me I need to call the police department. And I brought it out of state in Tennessee. I don't understand how after carrying insurance on this car, paying over $1,000 in fees to Alabama for taxes and registration on the car. I renewed it first when I bought it in June of 2023, and then 2 months later in August, and then a year later in August 2024. And just this year, finding out that I could lose this car that I thought legally was mine. It was registered in my name. And
they're telling you what?
Insult to injury.
They're telling
you. I've been told to prepare to surrender the car to the police department, and I'm waiting for
Is it stolen property?
What to do about that?
Are they telling you it was stolen, or what are they telling you?
Yeah, it's a stolen car.
Wow.
Apparently, the
Bona fide
person who sold
purchaser,
it
William.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that?
You know,
false identification too.
Right.
Sure. So, I mean, you think about this when you go to buy a home, right? And there's, they have to make sure it has clear title.
Yeah.
And there's title insurance, and there's all these different things. But that's not necessarily the case when you go to buy a car. And unfortunately, this is not the first time we've seen this issue.
Right.
You know, the seller, and by and large, it's buyer beware, right?
Okay.
Buyer beware. But the seller is supposed to make sure that they have clear title. And here they've sold a car that was stolen. Now, what is unclear is whether she bought it from a dealership or someone who may have that duty, or if she bought it from a private party. And that's where it may get sticky, right? Because if she bought it from a private party, there may not be much recourse unless you can still track that private party down.
So you'd be looking at suing the person that sold it to you, trying to catch up.
Yeah, I mean, you know where the dealer is. They didn't give you clear title. But if you bought it, just like William said, you bought it from an individual, marketplace, whatnot, good luck finding the person.
Oh, boy.
You do have a claim, don't get me wrong, but you would have to successfully file a complaint depending on the value of the vehicle. Sometimes it's in district court, which is what we call small claims court, but if it's over $20,000 in Alabama, you can make a claim under circuit court, different jurisdictional requirements. And then in Tennessee, there's various courts to choose from depending on the value of that particular vehicle. Now, you need to make an assessment like we do in all cases. Is there recovery to be made? And so, I have a lot of clients who call, hey, it's the principle of the matter. And, oftentimes you can get upside down. You spend all this money litigating a case, and even though you're right, you've still poured money into the case, doctors' depositions, filing fees, court reporters, investigators, experts. It can get expensive. So you want to make a risk-benefit analysis on, is it worth going after? And, oftentimes that it is, but again, you want to assess if you're going to putting all this time, money, and effort and stress, because litigation, is stressful.
Yeah.
When when William and I sit down and we're going to trial, with the client, they don't do that every day like we do,
Right.
like you do, Sharon.
Yeah.
So it's, you want to make sure your ducks in a row. What's the testimony going to reveal? Who are the witnesses that are coming, because that is your time to prove to the judge or a jury, the rightness of your cause. And you have the elements, just like baking a cake, sugar, milk, flour, eggs. You have to have all the ingredients. If it's a fraud case, you have to show there was intent. If it's a negligence case, duty, breach, causation, damages, all those things. And can you wrap that up? That's the first hurdle. But if you were to prevail, can you recover? Is there insurance? Now in Alabama, when we try a case, we're not allowed to say that the defendant has insurance. We cannot say that, so the jury does not know that. But is there insurance to cover that? And if there is, usually if you win, then you can recover. If there's not, are there assets to recover? Let's say you get a verdict and got a verdict for $75,000 3 weeks ago. We're trying to collect it. Now, that's the first step. The second step is collecting a verdict, and how do we go about doing that, William?
Well, if there's insurance to cover it, it's usually not that difficult. But if there's not, you're left trying to put it against, an individual's personal assets and collect their assets, or, if they've got money in the bank, recover it that way. It can be, as much as garnishing wages to try and get the judgment paid. So, like Will said, you don't want to throw good money after bad, but, most lawyers will tell you, if they're being honest, they've got a drawer full of judgments that if they could collect, they could retire. And there's some truth to that as well. But let's say, for instance, in this case, that the seller of the automobile knew that it was stolen.
Okay.
And then
now what have you got?
You're looking at fraud.
Right.
Right? Which,
okay.
In certain instances can carry with it punitive damages to punish that wrongdoer, and similarly situated wrongdoers to deter that type of behavior in the future. And she mentioned that she was able to insure this car.
Yeah.
And where I've seen this in the past is a lot of times, for better or for worse, insurance companies don't do a very thorough background check when they're insuring a vehicle. But when that first claim is made, they tend to do a pretty deep dive and make sure that the title
Right.
on that vehicle is clear. And where I've seen this before, the insurance company discovered that the automobile was stolen when the person went to make a claim.
Did they pay the claim?
Uh,
Surely, if they insured it.
They were not happy about paying that
Okay.
claim.
Right.
I will say that.
And the argument is, look, they accepted the money.
Yeah.
Had there not been any claim or damage to the vehicle,
They would have
still got
kept
their
the money.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So
Okay.
that was only fair.
We've got Sandra on the line with a question from Gunnersville. Hi, Sandra. Thanks for calling in. What's your question tonight?
Would I be liable if an Instacart delivery person or DoorDash delivery person is injured while making a delivery to my house?
Interesting, because
Now-
there's a lot of
Right.
deliveries going on now.
Now,
or your postman.
is it
right?
on your
Or postal.
property, or is the driver? You're talking about en route from the store.
I think she's talking about delivering it to her house, and they step on something on your porch or something like that. Sandra, is that what you're thinking about?
Right.
Yeah.
So you go into premises liability, and a lot of people don't. You can be, Sharon. You can be, depending on what you knew. How did you take care of your property? And did you know or should know that there's a hazardous condition that person's going to encounter? And if you go back to law school, there's 3 ways somebody's on their property: invitee, licensee, or trespasser. Right? So you owe the highest level of care to an invitee, somebody you invite on your property for your benefit. They're there. Maybe it's a social situation. You have a duty to warn them of any and all hazards, known or unknown, or known that you should have known about, right? And let's say there's someone coming on your property that's a repairman or someone for their benefit. It's a lower standard, but still you have to warn or make safe things that you know about or should know about. And if a trespasser, you owe no duty with the exception of you can't set spring guns. Let's say somebody's coming on your property, you can't
You can't booby trap your property.
Yeah, dig
Okay.
a tiger pit or something,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So if they're coming up on your porch, it's slippery, and you don't put a sign up, or that it's not the code, or there's some issue there, then yeah, but we want to keep that driver safe. We want to keep, your insurance, claims down if you can. So if they're coming on your property, you have a duty to make sure it's as safe as you can, or something you know about. And so yeah, you can be if you do something wrong, you leave a garden hose and it's dark and they can't see, and then where they're coming, that's a problem. And so, you want some self-responsibility. You want people to watch where they're going,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you can't set booby traps, and you can't just be negligent, which is really just a lack of care. Make the right choices. I tell my kids, make good choices, make sure it's safe, and hopefully you won't be liable. But if you are, homeowners coverage covers that if you have a mortgage on your property.
It does, so your homeowner's coverage will cover you for your negligent acts, whether they happen, on your property or off your property, as long as they don't happen in an automobile.
Okay.
So, those types of claims are typically covered by your homeowner's coverage. But let's, take the inverse of that, Will. What if you got, a gravel delivery sitting on your driveway, big old, half-ton delivery of gravel, and
Okay.
someone trips and falls over that?
Right.
There's not necessarily a duty to go cone that off, but if the hazard is open and obvious, sometimes there is a defense there that they can defend against those types of claims.
In the premises liability cases, they're difficult. Let's say someone goes in the store, trips over, a can right inside the door. First, they're embarrassed, right? Oftentimes, they get up, they limp out of there. Sometimes there's cameras. They don't get the video. They don't make a statement. They don't, when they get out of there, they're just embarrassed. Yeah. And a lot of jurors react negatively to premises liability cases because, hey, they think, I would not have been that careless. I would have watched where I was going. I would have done this. When you're, when we're watching the news and there's somebody, they just said somebody was injured in a gun shooting, right, at 2 in the morning in a parking lot. And you think to yourself while you're sitting in bed watching the news, that wouldn't happen to me because I wouldn't be there.
I wouldn't be there at 2 in the morning.
And so we have this self-preservation that wouldn't happen to me. And when it does happen to you, number one, you're embarrassed. And then you're like, oh, it can happen so fast. You get older, you start falling. I get it. It's going to happen once a man, twice a child. And it happens. And you have to make sure that your store is safe for all, old, young, if you're opening up your business. And so it's something to consider, and it happens to people, and it doesn't mean you're not looking where you're going. It doesn't mean you're clumsy. It happens, and the question is, could it have been avoided? Should it have been avoided? And is there something that the homeowner or property owner could have done or did not do to make it safe or make it more harmful? Yeah. And that's going to be the question that you ask the judge or jury in those type cases.
We're going to take a break, be right back answering it more. It's Ask Us Anything night tonight, so stay with us.
You're watching WAAY 31 Law Call. Your rights, your calls, live. Presented by the Tennessee Valley's award-winning personal injury and wrongful death law firm, Timberlake, League & Brooks. Featuring the knowledge and experience of Attorney Michael Timberlake, Attorney Will League, Attorney Heath Brooks, Attorney William Messervy. And hosted by broadcaster and family law attorney Sharon Doviet. This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Welcome back to 31 Law Call. We've got Will League and William Messervy from Timberlake, League & Brooks. And we've got callers waiting for Ask Us Anything night tonight. We've got Andrew on the line with a question from Madison. Hi, Andrew. Thanks for calling in. What's your question tonight?
Hi, thank you very much.
Sure.
I'm a senior citizen, and I feel like I'm being defrauded out of thousands of dollars with a fake credit card and sending me a fake-looking letter. and I took my letter to my bank, let the banker look at it, and he says it looks fake too. And we checked my credit score. I'm over 800 on a credit score, and this credit card number doesn't appear on my list.
Yeah.
But I still feel like I need to contact a lawyer about finding a lawyer that deals with elder fraud.
Well, it sounds like you managed to dodge this scam, which is the good news. You know, and unfortunately, it's a trend that we're seeing. It's a billion-dollar industry in the United States. These scammers, and the scams get more complex. There's one going on right now where they text message you from the Alabama Department of Transportation.
I got that one.
That, you know, you owe money or they're going to come and get your car. And unfortunately, a lot of folks, you know, have fallen for that and continue to. And the first stop needs to be the police department. You know, you need to report these scams because there are, at least in theory, you know, these task forces, and a lot of them are federal because they cross state lines.
Okay.
And, you know, that investigate these and track them down and, you know, punish these people. But unfortunately, for many of the victims who do fall for it and who do legitimately get scammed out of thousands of dollars of money, there's almost no recourse because they can't find the person, you know, and when they do, none of that money's there.
And if Andrew was smart enough to recognize it and didn't fall for it, does he have a lawsuit? Because he wasn't really damaged, right?
Well, you have to have damages. You have to show. I mean, fraud. You know, there could be punitive damages without that, arguably. But finding the people, as William said, is are so difficult. And disconnect the phone. Here we go. I wish the phone people, wherever the Wizard of Oz folks live, you know, be able to track that and regulate the phone. So FCC, let's get with it. Let's figure that out, because, you know, as William said, it's a billion-dollar, you know, it's a billion-dollar business in scamming our loved ones and our elderly. Mm-hmm. I was in the courthouse. This is a couple years ago, but trying a case. Buddy and his wife pulled up. She's in tears. She's on the phone, and they're concerned. And I'm like, "What's going on?" And they say that I missed jury duty, and if I don't come and pay $500, you know, give them I'm going to be arrested. And I just so happened a week before talk to someone who's a victim of the same scam. I get the phone from them, you know, and say, "Who is this? Is Officer so and so?" I said, "Well, I'm right here at the courthouse. You can come right outside and kiss my blah blah blah." And they freak out like, "Oh my God!" You know, and I knew it was a scam, but they did not.
Yeah.
You know, and had a little fun and hung up on the guy. You know, and they're like, they look at me like, "Have you lost your mind?" And I said, "Look, it's a scam. Officer so and so's not in here."
That's not how jury duty works.
They're going to write you. They're not going to call your cell phone and demand. You know, it's sad how often it's going on. And when you know, I think he was talking about elder abuse. You know, we're seeing more and more. There was a little bit of a dip, but we're seeing a lot more nursing home. We call it abuse, but it's nursing home neglect. Okay. And it's just poor staffing. Usually, it comes down to your loved one goes in a nursing home, and we're all going to be dealing with this. We all get old. Yep. We all are infirm. We all have issues, whether we're dealing with our parents, ourselves, all that thing. So you need, unless you're independently wealthy and you can afford it, great. But most of us cannot, and it comes down to, can you afford or can you qualify for skilled nursing? If you cannot, then Medicaid takes over. You're in the facility, but what kind of rights do you have? If you have no loved one, who's going to take care of you? Who's going to monitor that and make sure it's okay? And what William and I see consistently is, you know, we had a client die of dehydration, die of starvation. And we took depositions in that case. We found out that they were spending 7 pennies per resident for snacks a day. And so when all that money goes in, and so it was neglect, but then you take these depositions, and there's poor kids that are LPNs, there's not enough nurses, and there's just not enough human beings to take care of the loved ones. It's a thankless job. It's a hard job. Yeah. People are stressed when they get there. And they're yelling at the staff, sometimes understandably, but there's not enough staff. And the director of nursing, they don't hire enough. And, you know, the state of Alabama will go in and inspect these nursing homes. So before you put your loved one in a nursing home, go to the site, inspect the inspection that's done by the state of Alabama, and, you know, do everything you can do to research that place before you go, because it gets crazy, doesn't it, William?
Yeah, and those reports are public record. They're on Alabama Department of Public Health's website. They're called deficiency reports. They can be a little difficult to find. They are a little hidden on there, but you can navigate to those and check them out. But so much of nursing home care is just making sure that someone eats, drinks, does these things. And what happens is when folks begin to have particularly memory issues, a lot of times the nurse will come and they'll fill up the water jug. And they'll leave it by the bedside, but then they don't necessarily see if the person drank any water, and then there's a shift change.
And the person doesn't know.
And there's a lack of communication. And so, it's unfortunate, but we see these things more than you'd like to.
And like we're looking at records just last week, and we're taking the deposition, and they said they had a full meal, a bowel movement, and everything's good. Well, that person was not even in the nursing home during that time.
Oh,
they were actually in the hospital, and they're just checking these boxes.
Checking a box.
And so you don't know. And is it the kids? If they're overworked, let's get more people in these facilities, and let's take care of our loved ones. Let's take care of the elderly.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's take a break. We'll be right back answering more of your questions. Stay with us. Questions answered tonight. Here's how to get in touch with Will League and William Messervy with Timberlake League and Brooks in Huntsville, 256-536-0770 or 800-804-2502. The website is law-injury.com. And if you like them on Facebook, you can learn more about the law that way.
And it's a very special night for our very own Sharon Doviet. I hope you can guess why. 539-7337, SharonFamilyLaw.com.
It's my
Happy
birthday!
Oh, Sharon!
Thanks, you guys. Thank you very much. It's been a good day.
Glad you spent it up here with us, answering some questions on Lawcall.
Yeah.
Thanks for all your years, and happy birthday.
Thank you very much. It's been a long time, hasn't it? We've been doing this show for a long time. Thank you very much.
Right.
That's a nice surprise. We'll see you next week. Thanks for all your calls and questions tonight.